And I think right now we are then moving on to the segment for questions and answers, where I think I'm seeing a few questions in the Q&A tab as well as the chat. And I think I would like to just get this segment started maybe by asking our guest of honor, Dr. Amy Kaur. Could we maybe just find out from you, you have been hearing so much about the different NUS plans, different initiatives that are being rolled out. What role do you see NUS playing in contributing to Singapore's Zero Waste Master Plan? Dr. Kaur?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, let me thank all the speakers, Tommy, Professor Yong, Professor Leonard, Dr. Peck, for the very interesting papers that they have presented. I think quite insightful, the behavioral part, as well as share things, for instance. That's also very interesting. So indeed, I'm really, encouraged by the interest shown by both the academia as well as our students and graduates, right, young people, on the issue of sustainability. Let me say that I think NUS as an educational institution really can play a very major role in this drive towards zero waste. As I've said, we launched the Towards Zero Waste Master Plan last year, and government really cannot do this alone to achieve what we hope to achieve by 2030, diverting 30% of our waste away, reducing the amount of waste that we send to the Semakau landfill by 30% by 2030 is something that needs the support and cooperation of everyone. So every action counts, and NUS as a community indeed has a big role to play. And why do I say that? As Professor Young has shared earlier, I think NUS as a community can really lead the way. You use yourself, your community as a living lab. You can create, which is what you are trying to do with this action plan, eco campus, right? A carbon neutral campus, and try out innovative ways to do that, which is what some of you have shared in the campus. And if it works, you can actually also try and scale it up beyond your own community. And there are 3 areas, right, that you can do so, which has been shared, but just let me highlight and reiterate. Firstly, of course, you do have the talent and the resources and the capability to innovate, to drive R&D, to use new technologies, to adopt a circular economy approach, for instance, reduce or recycle the waste. So I understand that some of the academics, for instance, in NUS are already looking at waste gasification for this, a mixed waste, right? Mixed solid waste. Better ways of doing this. Either you harness energy or you produce slag, better quality, which can be then used in building materials. And somebody else is also doing something on biochar, building materials. And I also understand that in the area of food waste, for instance, recycling food waste, there is a project using black soldier fly larvae for recycling food waste. So I think these are exciting technologies and exciting R&D projects that can help us to move the needle, right? Needle moving ways to achieve this vision of towards zero waste. Then the second area, of course, is as a community, students, for instance, you have the ability and the resources and the capacity to educate and promote sustainability practices among the students in the community, either through maybe sustainability modules, for instance, and then you can get students to do projects, track, for instance, the movement of resources, right? Food, energy, water, materials, waste, and then look at projects that you can do to reduce the carbon footprint, right, to recycle and so on. So I think you have some of these elements there. And then, of course, thirdly, very important, about infrastructure. I hear that you of course, this building that you are sitting in, right? SDE, zero energy building. And again, you can learn from this infrastructure here, but your recycling bin, your transparent recycling bin, which actually I have another work group who is also trying to do this. So you beat them to this transparent recycling bin, but I think they will come up with some other design too. But very good test bed to see how behavior can be changed through this infrastructure, right? And then you were also talking about at the canteens, for instance, encouraging students to use reusable containers, no more single-use packaging materials, and so on. Again, this is something you can do within the university. We learn from this, and I hope that some of this we can actually scale up. So really championing sustainable practices within a community that's a little bit more homogeneous, and also I think reachable, through various formats, as well as having the ability and the resources and the talent to do this.
Cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaur, for sharing this. I think since we have you on screen right now, there is one question that I think one of our participants is interested to know. Jonathan would like to find out, where do our recyclables go to? Are they processed in Singapore or shipped elsewhere? Dr. Kaur?
Well, yeah, thank you. This is a very useful, very important question. I think quite a number of people actually always ask about where the recyclables go to, right? So it's a useful question. But let me first say that actually the total recycling rate in Singapore for all our waste generated is actually 60% in 2019. So we separate between domestic and non-domestic waste, right? And for non-domestic waste, the recycling rate is much higher. It's about 73%, versus, of course, domestic recycling rate, which some of our speakers have already shared, it's 17%. So in fact, most of our waste, especially the non-domestic waste, really is processed and reused, either recycled or reused locally. I give you an example: construction demolition waste, nearly all is recycled because these are all valuable materials and they are reused. Yeah. Even for plastics, for instance, if they are recyclable plastics like PET bottles and so on, the higher value plastics, there are plastic recycling facilities in Singapore, mechanical recycling, that will recycle this plastic into pellets that can then be used to make other products. So they become the raw materials again. Even food waste, if there are industrial food waste like soya bean, right? After you make the soya bean milk and so on, these are the waste. They are actually recycled into like animal feed, for instance. So these more homogeneous waste that can be treated, right, easily. So like I say, majority, about 30% of our recyclables are actually exported, right? Exported to various countries, where China, India, Thailand, and so on, even South Korea, actually. E-waste, part of it would also be recycled, but we do also have e-waste recycling facilities here, right? Handphones, for instance, computers, and so on. So what we are trying to do now is also to look at building up more capabilities, local recycling, right? So that we can extract the resources from this waste and close the waste loop. Therefore, we are looking at, for instance, e-waste. Next year, we will have legislation where the producer has a responsibility to collect back the end-of-life electrical and electronic products and must recycle it, right? So because of that, and also for packaging, including plastic waste, latest by 2025, we will also have a legislation that will require the proper collection and treatment, recycling of this packaging waste. And therefore, we are looking at e-waste recycling and plastic waste recycling, looking at the technologies and looking at which are the ones that would, that can be adapted for Singapore's context, right? In terms of environmental and economic sustainability. So we're actually looking at building up more of these capabilities, right, and capacity. So for plastic recycling, even for the plastics which are usually waste plastics, which are actually very difficult, cannot be recycled mechanically. We are looking at chemical recycling like pyrolysis, as I've mentioned earlier in my speech. So we are looking actually at developing and opening a plant, a chemical recycling plant for plastics, right? As a pilot first. And so this single-use plastic bag, which may be contaminated, we can actually collect it back, chemical recycling to produce new oil, which then become a feedstock again. All right. So these are some of the things that we're doing. We're building up the capability. Some are exported at this point in time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kaur. My next question is actually to all the panelists, especially to those currently in the NUS community. I think today's focus is about towards Zero Waste NUS 2030 Action Plan. My question to each of you, maybe starting with Dr. Peck, is what is one thing that really excites you about this plan that you have heard? And what is one thing that you have heard, that really excites you about this plan that you have heard? Dr. Peck, do you mind sharing with us?
As mentioned in my talk earlier, I started this waste minimization and recycling journey some 15 years ago. When I started, I actually looked at our tray return system. Even in the early years, we managed to get the whole NUS community to return their tray after they finished consuming the meal. That gave me a lot of hope. If we can do that for tray return, and we understand the factors that affect human behavior, I'm confident that we can reach our 2030 target. And that gets me really excited. But to make that journey, we need all of you to be on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Lee?
So I have a more general kind of reflection, right? So as what Dr. Kaur said earlier, right? So I think it's truly exciting that NUS has the opportunity to be like essentially a living lab, like a test bed for a lot of these ideas, innovations, as well as interventions, right? And so as alumnus myself of NUS, 2.5 decades ago, right? So I'm truly excited to participate in this endeavor. And when I talk to my colleagues at the business school, or even my colleagues at the Institute of Public Understanding of Risk, of which I'm a member, so there is so much energy, passion, and excitement, about doing something great. I wouldn't say great, but something that we think would matter, right? And I think there is lots of room for interdisciplinary collaboration, as well as collaboration with other colleagues in other countries, perhaps, right? So broadly speaking, I think this is a very exciting time, exciting moment, and I look forward to participating in this journey. Yeah.
Okay. Hema, what about you?
I think the most exciting thing for me is the fact that my work can be the basis for other people's work, like Tommy's Beans and so on. So I'm more excited to see how other students' works would be used in for the plan in the future.
And maybe Jonathan. Sorry, not Jonathan. Tommy. My apologies.
Yeah. So for me, what's exciting is actually the potential and more opportunities to collaborate with different students like myself, like how me and Hema actually work on this joint project, learning from each other of the different expertise, to actually create more, design more sustainable solutions that can encourage our own student body, like ourselves, to kind of onboard everyone in this zero waste journey as well. Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we don't have much time left. We have about 5 more minutes. Maybe if you have any questions, shout out in the Q&A. If not, we might attempt to answer them after the event. But Dr. Peck, there's actually one question for you. Let me read it out so that you can answer it. Is there a monitoring or analysis of the recycling life cycle? How much of the items are being successfully recycled? And how much is recycled materials being used?
Well, now we assume that whatever we put in the bin goes to the recyclers, 100% of it gets recycled. It may not be true. We hope it's true, but may not be true all the time because it could be contaminated to an extent that it's not economically viable for the recyclers to process it and to recycle it. So far we have not tracked beyond our waste, our recyclables, going to the recyclers. But going forward, as mentioned in my action plan, that we'll be tracking this. Right? We really like to know how much of the waste, how much of the recyclables that goes back into recycling actually gets recycled. Okay, so this is something that we are working on, and we hope to be able to get good data, and we are able to then close the loop and identify areas that we can improve on, and then close the loop of the circular economy. Thanks.
Okay, Dr. Peck, I think
Maybe I just sorry, can I just add in, chip in, right? About these recycling bins. So just to let you know that for the recycling bins, there are generally will be what we term as domestic waste, right? The blue recycling bins, and we still our blue recycling bins is a commingled recycling bin, so there is no separation of the different recyclables. But as long as they are recyclable, so Tommy and everybody else and Hima is doing great job trying to educate people about what is recyclable and what is not recyclable. But if you put the recyclables into the recycling bin, commingled together, they are all brought to a material recovery facility in this blue recycling truck. And then there it will be sorted out again, paper, plastics, and so on. The problem with the recycling bin now is that they are contaminated, as Hima has found out, right? Contamination rate on average is about 40%. So if we can get bring down the contamination rate, then more of these recyclable items that is put into the recycling bin will truly be recycled. Because it's okay if you don't sort it, we will sort it back end. But if it is contaminated, then it cannot be recycled. So I think the issue really is how to reduce this contamination rates.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaur. Maybe I would like to direct our final question for today to Dr. Peck. Dr. Peck, there's someone that mentioned that we hope you can involve the environmental services staff too, besides staff and students. Do you mind maybe sharing us a bit more? How are you actually, as the chairman of the task force, how are you actually co-creating this zero waste plan or even implementing the zero waste plan with different stakeholders in the university?
One key aspect that we have to address to make this plan successful is communication, education. We need to inform the community of what this plan is all about, get them excited about it. So the very first step is to get the message out. We need to engage the various stakeholders. All different segments of the NUS community needs to be informed of this plan, and then we can then get them to be on board. So we involve extensive communication, getting the message out so that they understand what we are doing and so that they can be a part of this. So the key is communicate, communicate, communicate.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the event. I would like to thank Dr. Amy Kaur for gracing today's event and Professor Yong for hosting this and all the speakers for actually taking time to prepare your sharing and for sharing your wonderful stories with all of us. It has been a fruitful session and we look to see you soon. And if there are some questions that we were unable to answer during this Q&A session, we might actually reach out to you on offline with other answers. And I think with that, thank you very much, everyone, and see you again.